Well, welcome everyone. Last week, we notified this year's applicants of the results of our readiness review. And I want to say congratulations to all of you who were determined to have demonstrated readiness, both organizationally and financially, to apply for an Impact San Antonio grant. Very exciting, and you should be really proud. I also want to thank you for joining us for this part 2 of our Impact San Antonio 2022 agency training. I'm Elizabeth Garrettson. I'm the Vice President of Operations on the Impact San Antonio Board. Now let's talk a little bit about Zoom. I'm guessing most of you are Zoom experts by now, but just a couple of quick reminders. We find that it's best if you set your Zoom screen layout to speaker view. Just a reminder that if you're using a call-in number instead of logging in on your computer, you won't be able to see our slides. Please remain on mute with your video turned off throughout the session and instead use the chat function to communicate with us. If you have a technical issue, please send a private chat message to technical support and Jen Bly will try to help. And finally, it's been our experience that a lot of technical issues can often be resolved by just logging off and then rejoining the Zoom. For questions, we encourage you to ask questions throughout the session. Again, please use the chat function and to everyone, and we'll address these during the Q&A at the end. We also just remind you, please don't use the public chat to communicate with each other as individuals because that can be distracting to our other participants. Hopefully you all attended part 1 of agency training, but let me reintroduce you to the team of Impact SA board members that are responsible for what we call our end-to-end grant process. Co-chairing our agencies and applications committee are Jenny McNaughton and Tony Reisterwood. They'll be your primary contacts throughout the application process. Also with us today are Ann Leday and Yvonne Grotus, our co-chairs of grant review. Ann and Yvonne lead our member volunteers through the review of your project applications. Audrey Laird and Susan Wampler are our co-chairs for grant oversight and outcomes. They have the task of working with grant recipients immediately after grants are awarded and through to the completion of grant projects and reporting on outcomes. Then also joining us today are Jen Bly, our technology lead, and Mary Hitt, our treasurer. Jen oversees all the systems we use, including our grant management system. And as treasurer, Mary helps ensure that we're gathering and analyzing the most appropriate financial information through both the questionnaire as well as the application. And again, I'm VP of Operations, and I have the pleasure of working alongside these amazing women. So here's a quick look at our agenda. Our part 1 session focused on the overall grant process and drilled into details on step 1, the organizational questionnaire. Today, we're going to focus more specifically on the project application and how we review project proposals and select our grant finalists. And as a reminder, these slides, as well as an audio recording of today's presentation, will be posted on the Impact SA website no later than May 16th. As a reminder, in 2022, our high impact grants will be $100,000 each. And in the past 2 years, in recognition of continued financial effects of the pandemic, we did accept applications for projects to sustain an existing program that was impacted by COVID-19. In 2022, however, Impact San Antonio has returned to our 3 traditional funding categories. These are new programs, expanding existing programs, or for capital investments and construction projects. In the grant application, 10% of every project budget will automatically be allocated for indirect costs or overhead. And then once grant awards are announced, we'll begin distributing 2021 grant funds in November. This picture reminds us where we are in the overall grant process. You all submitted your organizational questionnaires and financials, and our team used this information to help determine each applicant agency's readiness to implement an Impact San Antonio grant. Results of that readiness review were communicated last week, and again, congratulations. Now, all applicants who demonstrated readiness will have until Friday, May 27th at 5 p.m. to submit a project application. Our grant review teams will then work through the summer, reviewing and evaluating each of your project proposals. And then we'll announce grant finalists in September and finally culminate the year with our celebratory grant award night in October. Now on to the project application. In step 2, you're going to submit a project application that again focuses on the details of your project and the impact of the specific project that you're proposing. All project applications submitted by the deadline will be screened for completeness, as well as for compliance with the Impact San Antonio grant criteria. Complete and compliant applications will be passed to the appropriate grant review team based on the focus area that you, the applicant, has chosen. Our Impact SA grant review teams will then review each application, focusing their evaluations on the merits of each individual project proposed. Now, as you think about your project, here are some key logistical information to consider. Grantees will have 2 years to complete the project, so please make sure the project you're proposing can realistically be completed in this time frame. After receiving a high impact grant, grantees will not be eligible to apply again until 2026. This gives the grantee time not just to complete the project, but also to see outcomes of the project before applying again. Now, our grants are not unrestricted. They are granted for the specific project in the project application. These are the projects that our members have voted on. So plan ahead and choose your project carefully. The Grant Oversight and Outcomes team is responsible for dispersing funds awarded. This is done in 2 phases. $10,000 is paid out shortly after the grant agreement is signed, and the remainder is paid out over the course of the project on a reimbursement basis. Throughout implementation, documentation and reporting is required to ensure proper stewardship of our grants. We owe this to our members. Now I'll hand the program over to Tony to share more about our 2022 grant application process.